We're currently fishing in an era of hyper-realism where companies are striving to make baits as realistic as possible with intricate details, elaborate paint jobs, and actions that almost bring the fish to life, making them look like living organisms. But when the fish are under pressure and all the other anglers are throwing these realistic lures, the fish can still become wise to them, and it's times like that I like to turn back the clock and try out some old school classic lures. The one I come back to most often is the spoon, and not just any spoon, but the weedless spoon. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys 3 different ways to hack or modify the weedless spoon, one of which I came up with on my own. I'm going to show you guys these hacks right now. But before we do, if you guys do enjoy the video today or learn something of value here, I'd appreciate it if you'd like, comment, or subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Without further ado, let's get to hacking. In each of our 3 hacks today, what we're going to be doing essentially is adding a trailer to our weedless spoon. And I find that these culprit 7.5-inch worms are basically perfect, and they fit just about every size of spoon, all the way from 1/4 ounce up to 3/4 of an ounce. In 2 of our hacks, what we're also going to be doing is modifying the weed guard. I'm not a huge fan of the one that comes standard. It is pretty rigid. It can prevent some hookups, so I like to get rid of it. But for the first hack here, we're actually not going to modify any piece of the hardware itself. Everything we do is going to be strictly with this worm. For the first hack, we're actually just going to cut this culprit worm right down the center, right above the tail, and we're going to attach that to our hook right at the base of the spoon. But if we just cut it with our scissors and just put it directly on that hook, it's really going to be easy for those fish to grab the tail and pull it right off. It's not going to stay on there, so there's something we have to do to it first. What you're going to need is some heat shrink tubing. This is clear heat shrink tubing. This is a 1/2 inch size. 3/8 of an inch is actually ideal for these soft plastic worms, but I have 1/2 inch just so I could use it on some bigger baits. It's a little bit more versatile, but 3/8 of an inch is really a perfect fit. So what you want to do is just take your scissors, and we're going to cut about a 1/2 inch piece of that heat shrink tubing off, just like that. And then what you're also going to need is a heat gun. This is about a $12 heat gun I purchased off of Amazon. It works fantastically for these purposes. It heats up really quickly. There's no wait time involved when you do that. So all we're going to do is we're going to take our culprit worm, we're going to put that heat shrink tubing around it, and we're going to bring that down close to the base of the tail. You don't want it on the ribbon part down here. You want it on right where it gets fat, and just position it like so. And what we're going to do now is turn on our heat gun, and I'm going to hold this down in front of it and just move it around like this until it shrinks down onto that worm snugly. As you can see, the heat shrink wrap is now snugly fit to that worm, and it's transparent, so I really haven't affected the color of the worm or anything like that, and that's why I like to use the clear heat shrink wrap. It only takes about 20 seconds for that to cool down, and then all we're going to do is we're going to snip that culprit worm right above that heat shrink, just like that. And now we have a little tail with some tough heat shrink wrap around the top of it. We're ready to go ahead and attach this to our spoon. So now I'm just sizing up the angle of the hook, and when I place this on here, I can see I want to go through the top of one side and come out the bottom of the other, if possible. This stuff's pretty tough, but I'll try and control it through as best I can. So I'll go ahead and pop it through the top right there, and we're going to angle it down. We're going to try to come out the bottom of the other side, just like that. And we're going to slide that on up to the base of the spoon, just like that. So now we have a nice, beautiful ribbon tail at the base of our spoon that's going to add even more flutter to a bait that already has a lot of flutter. As you can see, we still have our weed guard in place, so it's still a weedless spoon with just a little bit more action, color, and pizzazz. This is something I really like to do with these in the springtime. By the way, I'm also going to save this because it looks like a nice little weedless Ned rig bait that I can drag around on the bottom, and it's red and green, so that's going to be really visible to those bass. Going to keep this as well. Not going to waste it. Alright, for hack number 2, we are actually going to be modifying the weed guard itself. So there's a couple of tools you're going to need. You're going to need some wire cutters or some tin snips, something that can cut through that metal weed guard, and a pair of pliers. Needle nose is probably best for this. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually cut through this weed guard if I can. I'm a little bit worried because this tool is a piece of crap, but we're going to try to cut it about 1 inch down below from where it starts. Ooh, okay, that wasn't so hard. So as you can see, we've removed a good chunk, maybe half of that weed guard, put it to the side. Next thing we're gonna do is take our pliers and we're gonna grab just the tip of that weed guard that's remaining, and we're actually gonna start to bend this out, and hopefully it doesn't break. But I'm just bending it backwards. Got it started there. See if we can clamp down from this side now. Nope, let's bend it a little bit more first. We want to bend it back, and then we want to clamp that down to where it's just about parallel with the weed guard, just like that. And now we're going to take our culprit worm and we're going to thread that right onto that weed guard all the way up to the top, just like that. And then we're going to see where this worm crosses the bend of the hook right there. We're going to find our place, and then we're going to take our hook through the worm right there in that spot. And we're basically putting it on the hook here just like we would if we were Texas rigging. I'm going to go ahead and pull that worm forward a little bit and just let that hook kind of skin hook at the top of that worm. And there we have it. What we've done here is basically convert our weed guard into a bait keeper. I've got my worm threaded on there. We've definitely got a lot more softness here for that bite. When that fish grabs it, it's going to pull it down enough for that hook to penetrate. Whereas before we had a rigid metal weed guard, which when they bite it, kind of turns them off and makes them let it go. In my experience, it happens more often than not. Now with this hack, I feel like we've made a tremendous improvement to our weed guard. It's a lot more biteable for the fish. The only downside to this hack really is that our bait keeper we've created out of the weed guard is pretty thick, and so it kind of tears up that worm as you're sliding it on there. So after it gets pulled down once, it really is going to be difficult to put that back on. But overall, we definitely have a more biteable lure here. It's going to help you get a lot more hookups. But I developed a third hack on my own, which I'm going to show you guys right now, which is going to give us the same advantages as this worm being rigged this way, but it's also going to keep that worm on there basically forever. For our third and final hack, and definitely my favorite one, we're going to need our wire cutters again, because what we're going to do is actually completely remove the weed guard that comes with the spoon. Ooh, Jesus. So now we've completely removed our weed guard, and what you're going to need is a split ring and a twist lock. This is a size 2 split ring. Size 2 or 3 works best for the silver minnows because it has this little eyelet here. But if your weedless spoon has one of these holes that is a little further away from the tip of the spoon, you might need a little bit bigger split ring. If this is your situation with your weedless spoon, I just suggest you get a split ring that has a diameter that is twice the distance from that hole to the tip of the spoon. Just eyeballing this one here, that's about a size 4. But I'm going to use a size 2 because I like to go as small as I can get away with, and a size 2 works just fine on the little eyelet at the tip of this silver minnow. So if you've got fingernails, just use them to get it started on there. It can be kind of a pain in the ass. If you got some split ring pliers, that could work a little bit better for you. I got lucky and did it on my first try here. So now I'm just gonna thread that split ring all the way on to that eyelet. It's so tiny, but I can do it, and I got it right there. So now we've got our split ring on the eyelet just like that. Now right here is our twist lock or our screw lock, and I just want to make sure I use one that can fit inside the tip of that worm. And the twist lock is a little bit easier to work with because you basically can just hook the end of it in there and then just twist it around until you get to the top. And when you get to the top, it just kind of pops into place just like that. So now we have our eyelet at the top of our spoon connected to a split ring connected to our twist lock. Next, we're just going to take our worm and we're going to go ahead and twist our twist lock into the tip of that worm. We want to get it all the way down inside there, all the way up to that split ring, just like that. Next, we're basically just going to Texas rig it kind of like we did before. Find where it goes through the bend of that hook, take our hook right through that spot, up and through the top, get our worm into place, and just like before, we're going to skin hook it there just to hide the tip of that hook. And this next part is important. When you actually tie this lure on, you want to tie your knot to the split ring and not to that eyelet. That's just going to make sure it keeps that weed guard nice and tight. It's still obviously easy to bite down for that fish, but keeping that thing tight and keeping the tip of your hook hidden right there inside that worm is going to really help this thing get through all the grass, but still be plenty soft enough for the fish to bite down on that and get you a nice hookup. Now, one last bit of advice: if you are getting short strikes from the fish and they're seeming to really grab this tail, but they're not getting all the way up to the hook, one thing you can do is just shorten that tail by taking a pair of scissors. Want to keep the tail basically looking the same, coming to a point just like it already is, but just not as far. And we're just going to cut through the tail just like that. Now we've got a shorter tail. It's going to give us the same action, but a much smaller profile. Don't have to worry as much about those short strikes. I definitely want to encourage you guys to experiment with different types of worms, with different styles of tails, even different types of soft plastic, different colors. It's so versatile, all the things that you guys can do with this hack. The only suggestion I really have when you guys are experimenting is that you don't use something that's too heavy, too wide, and too bulky that's really going to take away from the action of that spoon, because that is so important to have. When you experiment and find new ways to catch fish, it makes it that much more rewarding when you have that success. Thank you guys again for joining me for this installment of Just the Tip. I've got a lot planned for this series. We're going to be covering a ton of fishing tips and tricks this year. I've also got more tips, tricks, tutorials, unboxings, reviews, and adventures all coming your way. So if you did enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.